We have to have that moment where we're willing to cheer ourselves on and say, you've got this. You can do this. You have what it takes. Here's the body of evidence. We need to do that for ourselves. So we've got to be our own cheerleader.
If you're not conscious about your investment strategy, you won't end up where you want to be, not financially or as a human. On this show, we interview highly successful investors and share how they overcame limitations to become unstoppable forces of success. If you're ready to learn what it is to be a conscious investor so you can end up where you want, keep listening.
Welcome back, conscious investor. You have what it takes. Full stop. Yeah, you do. Everything you need is already hardwired in you. And we're going to dive into that. We're going to dive into how you're discrediting yourself, how you're putting yourself last and making yourself feel good for that, and how you're making reasonable excuses and all the things that you need to do about that. But before we do that, I want to do a huge thank you and shout out to Melrod27 for thank you. You left an amazing review on the Apple podcasts for the Conscious Investor, and it means the world to me. Absolutely filled my heart. She wrote, refreshing and inspiring. We live in a world where financial success often takes precedence over compassion and community engagement. It's refreshing and inspiring to listen to Julie and her guests as they discuss mindfulness, community, and of course, all things technical about REI in a thorough but easily digestible way. I love that part, by the way. Julie's compassionate and positive approach to passive investing serves as a reminder that true wealth goes beyond monetary gain, extending to the betterment of ourselves and those around us. High five, thank you. You have the message. Whether you are a seasoned investor or just starting on your financial journey, like me, there is much to be gained from listening in. Melrod27, thank you a million times over for leaving an honest rating and review. If you haven't already done so, it means the world to me, truly does. Head on over to whatever platform you're on, like, subscribe, share, leave a review that's honest. That might be a 1-star review. That's okay. Just be honest. But I love hearing from you because this podcast is intended to serve and support you in every single way. I also want to do a shout out to our show sponsor, Mode Wealth. My goodness, that has made a huge difference for our family in putting forth tax strategies. Oftentimes, we might just want to file our taxes using TurboTax or H&R Block or something like that. But really, when we're investing in real estate and our investment portfolio is growing, it is absolutely imperative that we are employing a tax strategy or employing and deploying a tax strategy. And that means you need to have a tax strategist who really understands the nuances of real estate investing and how to leverage all of those tax benefits. So head down into the show notes. You can click and connect up with Mode Wealth. Okay, guys, you have what it takes, full stop. This really came about because I have a lifelong friend. And this lifelong friend is so extraordinarily skilled, so talented, that if you met this friend, you could think you can do anything you put your mind to. You have everything it takes. I bet you have a friend like that, also conscious investor, or a family member, someone who comes to mind where you just look at what they do and you're thinking, is there anything you can't do? It's amazing, especially when we see our friends that are able to adapt themselves into a new situation. But what's crazy to me is that this very close friend of mine is actually not taking all the measures. I'm thinking, you have all this opportunity in front of you. You could be anything and everything and more than you ever dream of. And this person is just stopping themselves. It's really making me a bit frustrated because I see all the potential and possibility within this very close friend of mine. And I do say this to my friend, by the way, Conscious Investor. You know, I'm always a truth teller. But I've been contemplating this, right? Like, well, why wouldn't this dear friend of mine be going all in on the skills that have taken a lifelong to cultivate and develop? Well, the reality is that most of us will discredit ourselves. I don't know that you have ever done this, where maybe you've self-sabotaged. You don't have this identity that you really can be. Maybe you're holding on to it because you're like, no, that's a dream or that's a someday possibility. Instead of saying, dreams are meant to be real. Like my friend Jerome Myers says, by the way, if you're not listening to his podcast, you really should be listening to his podcast. The dreams should be real. They should be something that we are bringing to reality because that dream is within us for a specific reason. It's part of our purpose. And yet we discredit that dream. We say, oh, well, it's just a dream. We don't really need that. So maybe you want to go for a raise or a promotion or something at work. Maybe you want to be the face of a nonprofit. Maybe you want to help organize some charity type event. But you discredit yourself. You're like, oh, well, you know what? That person organizes it every single year, and I don't want to step on their toes, and I don't, right? We just kind of discredit ourselves in all these ways instead of allowing ourselves to show up in our full magnitude that we were created for. Wow, that's such a bummer for the world around us. Imagine if everybody was showing up with like their full potential broadcasted to the world. What an extraordinary place. Here's another way that we do this, where it's like we have everything that it takes, but we don't allow ourselves to see it because guess what? I'm just going to put myself last. We make it feels awkward to us. And so we just naturally, oh, well, you know what do you want? What would you like? And we defer to the world around us because remember recently we talked about being selfish. Well, if I actually say what I want and what I'd really like to have, I might hurt somebody's feelings. I might step on their toes, and I don't want to do that because I don't want to be perceived as selfish. And, I'm just going to put myself last, because that is, especially if you're like me and you're raised in the church, is like, well, I better put myself last because, I want to be first at the end of the day, end of the game, right? I just say we have these things going on in our brains. I'm not sure what story you're telling yourself, but really a lot of it comes down to this false sense of humility when we're talking about putting ourselves last. Guess what? It's okay to give yourself permission to go for what you want. You've heard me talk about taking the biggest slice of pizza or the small slice of pizza, whichever one you want, or a piece of cake. You don't have to give what you think is the best to somebody else. It's okay to take the best for yourself. Like, it's not a selfish act. It's pretty funny how we think about that. By the way, go back and listen to the episode on being selfish because I talk about my daughter and the slice of pizza and just how interesting our perception, our own thinking shapes what we believe is best and might not be what the other person that you're thinking of thinks is best. Here's one more thing that of many, but I'm just going to share one more area where it's like, we have what it takes, and we just don't receive it because guess what? We're so busy making reasonable excuses. You've heard me talk about reasonable excuses a lot, conscious investor. You know it, I know it, but guess what? You know what? We have what it takes, but then we say, oh, I just need a little more education. I just need to take that one more online class. I just need to talk to 10 more people. I just need some more money and then I can do it. Or I just don't have the time. I just need more time. And then we make these reasonable excuses to let ourselves feel okay about not being zealous about pursuing our passions and ambitions. So let's ditch all of this, right? We want to ditch all of these things because we don't want to hold ourselves back. When we hold ourselves back, that is actually pure selfishness. The world needs us to be showing up as our very best, our very brightest, our very most spirited, gifted, talented people in the world. And when we choose to not invest in ourselves, when we choose to not better ourselves so that we can show up better in the world, That's a harsh truth. We're being selfish. By the way, I just want to remind you that if anything came down to an amount of education necessary in order to be successful at anything, then everyone would have an opportunity. Like you just look at, across the United States, we have access to education. We have people who've graduated. We have people with multiple degrees still living in a basement, because it all comes down to the story we are telling ourselves. So we've got to control what is the narrative that we are telling ourselves. What excuses are we making? Why are we discrediting ourselves? Because we have everything it takes. And there are people that have far less education than many of us that are exorbitantly successful. Okay, so, we're just kind of cushioning ourselves when we say that we need more time, money, energy, education, things like that. Reasonable excuses will hold your life hostage. That's not the life you want to live. Go get the dreams. So here are a few strategies, right? You're like, okay, Julie, I get it. I get the message that you're saying, but what do I do about this? Well, let's go through a few different ideas. One, you've heard me talk about this also on previous episodes. Let's look at the body of evidence. When's the last time, and I was working with a coaching client on this, it's like, let's look at the body of evidence. If you want to learn how to trust your intuition, for example, well, we don't have to wait for the next moment. We can go back over our lifetime. We can look at, oh, well, my intuition was telling me XYZ and I didn't listen to it, and this is how it turned out. Or my intuition was saying XYZ, I listened, and this is how it turned out. We can time travel back in our life, and we can see and collect all this and create this body of evidence that will demonstrate to us what is actually before us. We can get a better picture of ourselves. And more often than not, when we collect that body of evidence, we're able to see all the amazing things that we've accomplished. I mean, really, conscious investor, if you actually sat down and looked at all the things that you've accomplished over the last 6 months, even, you'd probably shock yourself at how many successes that you've had. But I bet that you are dwelling still on that one quirky, weird thing that you said to one person at the coffee stand, right? I mean, like, that's just human nature. That's what we do. And that's why it's so critical that we create and we maintain these bodies of evidence so that we can see the truth about who we are. And that truth sometimes will reveal patterns that are successful and patterns that could derail our dreams. So, body of evidence, that is amazing. That body of evidence will also support you in remaining objective. So as you are making decisions going into the future, you're actually able to process them and be far more objective about what is taking place because you see yourself in a more holistic way. You're not just seeing the faults, because that's usually what we see about ourselves. You're seeing yourself like, wow, no, I do have successes and I do have these areas that are weaknesses, propensities for me to, not make the most well-informed decision. And, I have some of these areas where I have dropped the ball and I don't want to do that again. We really get to see ourselves and we can be far more objective. Recently, I was in a meeting. I'm the first to say, I'm a recovering control freak. I don't mind pointing out, hey, these are some of the things that I have to keep checks and balances on because otherwise they can be really detrimental to the people around me. So, hey, I'm just letting you know, I'm aware of it. You are absolutely welcome to keep, to mention something to me, to let me know you might need to do a check-in. Okay. Healthy things. Let the world around you know. Because guess what? Ain't nobody perfect, right? So we really need to be digesting that. And speaking of perfection, good golly, is that what we're aiming for still? Nah, perfection is not something that we need to be striving for. And here's the deal. We need to be on our team. Now, conscious investor, I'm an avid mountain biker. I will pick the trail and being outdoors on a trail, hiking, biking, whatever. Love that space. But I understand team sports and I understand rooting for your team. And it's crazy because I don't follow team sports very well at all. But if you take me to the game, you better bet I'm going to get into it. And I'm going to be cheering for whatever team I'm cheering for. And isn't it interesting that we can get behind our favorite players? We can get behind our teams. We can get behind our friends. Our friends might be going through a tough time, and we'll get behind and we'll rally and we'll cheer them on. And we will show them a body of evidence we've collected over our friendship about how great they are and what they're able to accomplish. When is the last time you did that for yourself? It's a reality check. And here's the reality is, we need to be on our team. Again, not selfish. We have to have that moment where we're willing to cheer ourselves on and say, you've got this. You can do this. You have what it takes. Here's the body of evidence. We need to do that for ourselves. So we've got to be our own cheerleader. Now, for those of you who are like Julie, I really don't want to make a fool of myself. I really am striving for perfection. And I really just need that consolation, that comfort that I understand where this is headed in life. And I just want to reassure you, and you've heard me say this before, you don't know what's 2 blocks up and 1 block to the left. We don't know. But the number one thing that we do know is that if we don't take a step now, everything that we have, everything that we've been prepared and equipped with is just going to rot. It's just going to sit there and accomplish nothing at all. So we don't have to have a crystal ball, and we can take just that one step. That's all we need, one step. And all of those steps stack up. They're incremental and they build on each other. And before we know it, oh, wow, we've made it to the end of the block. And wow, I was going to go that direction, but now that I can see that way, I think I'm going to continue going straight for another block. Right? We can make more well-informed decisions because we're taking the steps, we're gaining the experience, we're developing our skill set, we're developing our internal compass, our knowledge base about ourselves. And this is absolutely imperative. The reality is, conscious investor, you are uniquely created. You are 1 in 500 quadrillion. That is a very special place to be in the world. To be alive right now. The world is not a horrible place. The world is a very wonderful place. Yes, there are bad things that happen in the world. That doesn't mean it's a horrible, rotten place. Because guess what? You are in this place. You're not horrible and rotten. I'm in this place. And guess what? I'm not horrible and rotten. And if you would have asked me that 3 years ago, I would not have been able to actually say that aloud to you, conscious investor. I would have been insecure and thought I probably shouldn't say that. Oh, what? You're not, I'm not, and I bet you know at least a handful of people that are really great people. The world's not a horrible, rotten place, and we are uniquely created for something special in this world. So guess what? Conscious investor, you have everything in you, everything that you need, full stop. Stop running away from it. Stop making reasonable excuses. Stop discrediting yourself and stop putting yourself last. And let's start creating that body of evidence so that we can be on our team and cheer ourselves on. Okay? Because you are extraordinary and special. Conscious investor, I would hope that this resonates with you and that this supports you as you go about your week. Until next time, live big, love bigger, and do great things.
What's the big deal about investing in apartments? Why is it better than investing in a slew of single-family homes? I've compiled a lot of information on why investing in a multifamily, also known as apartments, will help you reach your investment goals. Head over to 3keysinvestments.com and download the Why Invest in Multifamily guide today.